Rolling Stone today, they profile 70 different election officials who have been put into position in the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, who are election denialists, committed election denialists. Officials that have been put in place in all of those swing states to make sure that election results, no matter what they are, do not get certified in those states this year. Quote, at least 22 of these election officials have already refused or delayed certification processes in recent elections. According to Democratic election lawyer Mark Elias, quote, I think we are going to see mass refusals to certify the election in November. Quote, Republicans are counting on not just that they can disrupt the election in big counties, they're counting on the fact that if they don't certify in several small counties, you can't certify statewide results.
By now, you've all seen the Rolling Stone article, the one that inspired that chilling clip from Rachel Maddow titled, These Swing State Election Officials Are Pro-Trump Election Deniers. We've got the author of that piece with us today, Justin Glawe. Justin, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote that very sobering article outlining the fact that at least 70 pro-Trump election conspiracy theorists are right now working as county election officials, people who've doubted the election results in the past, with some of them outright having already refused to certify elections. To what extent does it feel like their refusal to certify anything other than a Trump win, a Republican win in November, is inevitable?
I think that's the game plan. I don't think that they would say it that way. I don't think that they would. And in fact, some of these people that I've talked to have said, oh, well, no, we don't plan to, refuse to certify. But, I think that we have clues to that based off of what's already happened in places like Washoe County, Nevada, and Fulton County, Georgia, where under pressure in Washoe County from election deniers, even a moderate Republican briefly said, no, I'm not going to certify these results, right? Based off of really questionable fraud claims. So, right. Yeah, I think that is a very real possibility that anything that is not a obvious Trump win, they're going to say, well, we can't certify these results because there was all this fraud, right?
Is there a sense among these people that it doesn't even matter what happens with the actual votes because these administration officials themselves serve as a kind of stopgap for the Republicans to ultimately just get what they want anyway?
Right. I think there is no situation in which these officials in particular would accept election results unless every single person who's in charge of counting every vote, every person involved in every election system in the country is a full-throated, Trump-supporting person who believes that Joe Biden stole the 2020 election. Only then, really, would most of these people say, okay, you know what? Yes, Trump lost, or, somebody else won. But without having all of that in place, they're not going to buy it at all.
Do you think that they actually believe there's fraud, or is this just, that they recognize that refusing to certify is the avenue that they'll inevitably have to take because winning at any cost is the whole ballgame here?
I think that these people in particular, because let's be clear here about who these people are. These are local county election officials. This is a part-time job. Some of these people, they may not even be getting paid for all I know, but if they are getting paid, it's a very small amount of money. These are appointed positions mostly. So these are not elected officials. So yes, this is always the big question with election denialism. Do people actually believe this, or is this a politically expedient thing for them to do to rise in the ranks? And, for people in Congress, I think we know the answer to that. Many of them probably don't believe it, but they know that it's going to get clicks, that it's going to get hits, that It's going to get them reelected. But for these people, these are the true believers. They don't really they're not making money off of this, really. They are not, getting a state Senate seat or something like that. Some of them are. But for the most part, these are people who are, if you've ever been to a local election board meeting, these are the same people who are on your local school board or, your local, whatever the board is that deals with county ordinances and stuff like that. So like I said, I think these are the true believers. These are the foot soldiers.
Well, presumably these people do have access to every minutia of data, which should make them better informed than your average conspiracy theorist. So does the fact that they have that data at their disposal count for nothing, that they would still just fall for these blatant conspiracy theories?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In some instances, I talked to one of these people in Arkansas, which I did a lot of research on these folks in Arkansas and Mississippi that was not included in the story. But this guy was interesting because he was like, oh, 2020 stolen from Trump. I became an election official to fix the system. And he's one of these guys who kind of then got in there and was like, oh, actually, there's not really any major fraud that's happening, right? But it came with a caveat, right? He said, I know there's not fraud in whatever county he was in Arkansas that I can't remember the name of, but I can't say the same for all these Democrat cities in these Democrat states because those are the places that Democrats run, and so there could be widespread cheating there, right? So that's one example, but as far as a lot of the other people who have access to this minutia of information that you're talking about and still believe this stuff, I have no explanation for it other than that a lot of these people are on the older side and that there's a lot of very technical information and data that's involved here that also involves a lot of sort of computer technology. And I think that it's difficult to understand even for people who are very in the know about this stuff. So I think it's just almost like sort of an ignorance thing to a certain extent.
For the election official in Arkansas, for example, who said, okay, well, it looks okay here, but what about all those corrupt Democrat cities? Mm-hmm. For those people, does what they do in their little, in their office in Arkansas, does that feel like a way to push back against what they perceive as clear, certain corruption happening in those Democrat cities, and so they feel an obligation to compensate for them?
Right. Yeah. So it's a mindset of, there may be cheating elsewhere. These people may be cheating in Atlanta and Detroit and places like that, but they're not going to cheat here in Lee County, Mississippi or whatever. Right. And that's because we are in charge here and we are for election integrity. When in reality, I mean, as you well know, like the rules and the systems in place are really not very different across states in terms of things that can catch something like widespread voter fraud. You know what I'm saying? Like those systems and those rules, you're going to catch, if somebody actually, used a mule to input 1,000 fake ballots, whether it's in Lee County, Mississippi or Detroit, Michigan, they're probably going to get caught.
Yeah. I'm certain that the question you got more than anything as the result of this is folks reaching out to you and asking what the legal recourse is. So what do you say to those people?
So the legal recourse for refusing or denying or delaying certification of election results is essentially lawsuits, but also there have been instances in Arizona, for instance, in Cochise County, there were 2 officials who refused to certify results. They have been charged criminally for sort of like dereliction of duty type stuff. In other places, Democrat groups and the party has filed lawsuits against officials who have refused to do that. In Washoe County recently, like I was talking about, that moderate official who reversed on a previous decision to certify and said, actually, there's too many potential problems here. I'm actually not going to certify my own election win, is what she said earlier in July. In that instance, the county attorney and the Secretary of State came and they kind of told them like, hey guys, this is your duty to do this. Like, this is not really up to your discretion to certify. You have a legal obligation to certify these results. And wouldn't you know that she again changed her mind along with another Republican on that county commission and said, okay, we'll certify these results. But however, there was one Republican still that refused to certify. So those are basically the recourses that are available at this point.
Okay. And just for those watching right now, I will be speaking to Mark Elias in an episode of Democracy Watch about exactly this. And I know that Justin, you spoke with him for the article as well. So for people watching, please make sure to subscribe so that you can be notified when we do have that interview. Justin, you gleaned a lot of these people's political beliefs just by kind of scouring their Facebook pages. Did it scare you to see how susceptible these people in positions of power actually are to disinformation?
Yes. I mean, these Facebook pages, some of them are quite something.
I'm sure they're just a treat to go through
Yeah,
this.
look, it's not just like, some of these people, like, there was a handful, there was only a couple of posts, right? But like, that's enough for me to know that like they believe in this stuff,
Yeah.
But for other people, I mean, it was just prolific, and not just about election fraud, but like every right-wing culture war issues that you can think of, anti-vaccine stuff, anti-LGBTQ stuff, the groomers, like just everything that you can possibly imagine. And I'm not talking about like, oh, they made like 4 posts in a year. I'm talking like all day, every day. And like, if that's what it looks like for me on the public facing side of what their Facebook looks like, I can only imagine what it looks like inside their own heads as they're consuming this massive volume of misinformation and culture war outrage stuff. And in some cases, like it became concerning to me because obviously, we know that misinformation like this really, really gets some people fired up. And, there's trying to mess around with elections, and then there is the possibility of political violence. And, like, these people are consuming the same stuff that leads down that road. Like, that is what their diet consists of. It's a you are what you eat type thing.
Right.
And for some of these people, I think that is a concern. For most of them, they're just they're just like our crazy uncle on Facebook, kind of.
But isn't this by design? Like when you have the Steve Bannons of the world who specifically work to recruit exactly these kinds of people who he himself radicalized, isn't that exactly what the Republicans are looking for, to fill the ranks of these jobs, these openings, these positions with exactly the kind of people who can gum up the works because they themselves have been radicalized by these bad actors on the right?
Right. And tying the existence of these people in these positions up the food chain of Republican politics is something that I've really tried to do over the last few years as I've been researching this stuff. And I have not yet found any like major evidence that like these people were being sort of put into place by the Republican National Committee or the Trump campaign or whatever. But it's more of like sort of a decentralized network. Right. Like I said, they're all consuming the same material, the same content. They're all believing in this, this lie of widespread election fraud in 2020. So in a way, the powers that be within the Republican Party, they don't even need to sort of put these apparatchiks into place in all these local election bodies because those apparatchiks sort of already exist. Now, what I will say is that there have been lots of cases where, like I said, many of these officials are appointed, right? So in Spalding County, Georgia, the Democrats get 2, the Republicans get 2, so like they get a pick. They're people who are on the election board. And in a lot of places, what I've seen is that the more moderate voices are getting pushed out in favor of the more full-throated election denier people, so that those people can be in place on the election boards to look over election integrity.
So I guess the issue for me, and I know this isn't your job to do this, but I guess what comes next? I mean, your job that you executed beautifully, I think, with this piece was kind of shining a spotlight on exactly what's happening. And your job isn't supposed to be what's next, but I feel like I should still ask, at least for your opinion on the question of what's next.
It's a good question, and it's one that has been posed to me a lot in recent days in the wake of this story coming out. And I'm glad that people are starting to ask it, because when I started down this path, my whole idea was like, these people believe in lies. Like this, there is no proof that there is such a thing as widespread election fraud. Therefore, all of the actions that follow that are not based in reality. And my thought was the best thing to sort of alleviate this problem is sunlight. And that the more that I could show people, here's who these people are. Because let's be very frank about what happens at a county election board meeting. At a county election board meeting, the person who's on this list that's in my story is not coming out and saying, Joe Biden stole the 2020 election. That language is never really used. It's used on their Facebook pages a lot of times, which is how I caught a lot of these people.
Yeah.
But it's sort of in between the lines, right? And so I've always thought if I can just expose these people for their true beliefs, then locally it will raise awareness among Democrats or liberals or whatever you want to call it, or just regular people who understand that there's no such thing as widespread election fraud, and that these people would sort of, like, for lack of a better term, to be shamed out of office or something like that, right? Like, sunlight brings pressure.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, especially in Spalding County, Georgia, which I've written a lot about, that has not happened. That putting sunlight on these folks has not resulted. But I think maybe that is starting to change, especially as people start understanding more about the issue of certification. And I hope that's the case.
Yeah. Finally, let's finish off with this. You yourself are pretty steeped in some of the worst doom and gloom in the U.S. and what our politics really has to offer. How are you holding up personally? And beyond that, what gives you hope right now?
I'm holding...
That's a dooms question right there.
No, it's not. It's not. I have lots of things that give me hope. I mean, I'm holding up, honestly, fine. I just think I'm just kind of like maybe I'm a little sick or something. Like, I just enjoy this work, you know?
Yeah.
I just spent 2 weeks on the road.
Sounds like somebody that works in political media.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I feel like I'm a little sick. Yeah, that sounds about right. That checks out.
The thing that gives me hope is that, I think that, you mentioned the legal recourses for all of this stuff. Like, I don't know. It's possible that there could be en masse certification refusals in November, and then now we're going up to the Supreme Court, and we got like major problems. But I think one of the things that gives me hope is that I think that courts and, sort of the adults in the room in a lot of these places are going to look at certification and be like, no, you cannot stop this. You cannot stop certifying results in Wayne County, Michigan, because some yahoo came up here to an election board meeting talking about Venezuelan election fraud in Dominion voting machines. Like, you can't do that. And I think that, like, the realities of all of this, my hope is that reason prevails. And that's the thing that gives me hope right now.
Well, that sounds good. We'll leave it there. Justin, where can my viewers and listeners see and hear more from you?
American-Doom.com. It's a newsletter on Substack, and that's where I publish this stuff all the time. So they can go there.
Excellent. I'll publish the link in the post description of this video. Justin, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, especially, and for taking the time today.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.